where the parents try their best, and I empathize with those parents. But there are too many instances where parents are actually perpetuating the bad behavior in this country and then expecting somebody else to deal with it. It cannot work. And I don't know how the government intends to deal with that particular issue, but it is the source and the root of what we are talking about as it relates to crime prevention and where we are as a country in terms of this crime crisis. And Mr. President, within that breakdown of the household and the family unit, that's one layer, but we gotta go deeper now. The other layer to that is addressing the dysfunctional relationship between adults in this country as it relates to sexual and romantic relationships. Because the children who are born out of that dysfunction are the product of what we have in our society today. And I know that's going to be an uncomfortable topic because there's some norms that we are accustomed to that we say, man, that's how he is, that's how she is. But the byproduct of that, Mr. President, are children who do not have the safe, supportive, and loving environment that they should have because they're being passed around from house to house, some of them being abused, and what you then see as a product of that are people who cannot function in our society. Because sometimes it is not a case that somebody wants to go on a block, you know. It's because the amount of confusion and dysfunction that is happening in the house. They run to the block. They find safe haven on the blocks. Because the mother, the father, and whoever else that live in the house behaving as though they ain't got no sense. No, I'm keeping it real today. They're behaving as though they ain't got no sense. All hours of the morning, cursing, carrying on. Children can't do their school work. I am telling you, Mr. President, the root of this problem exists in our homes. Mr. President, the second root, and the leader of government business mentioned it, indiscipline. For some reason, in all of our modernization and trying to keep up with the rest of the world and becoming, we're punching above our weight and all these other things, the standards that we are accustomed to have completely eroded. When I was growing up, Mr. President, you could not pass an adult on the road and don't say good morning or good evening. Who you think you are? You have children now that curse you. If you say to them, well, young man or young woman, that's not the way to behave, Mr. President, they will curse you in their school clothes. We have to address these areas because at the heart of this problem are these issues of indiscipline in the schools, on our roads, as the leader of government business said. I came here this morning, Mr. President, and I saw about 3 or 4 infractions. Red lights being ran, people on the wrong side of the road. If you just look at how drivers behave on our roads, it is a clear indication that Bajans behaving how they feel like. If you are at a major stop and you take too long just because you want to be sure that a car is not coming up on your left, they're blowing your horn. The place is only 166 square miles. You can't drive from New York to LA and Barbados. So if it takes me 2 seconds just to make sure the road is clear, I have somebody behind me cursing me. And Lord forbid, if you are at a junction trying to get out, somebody is calling you out and you don't come out fast enough, they're cursing you then too. In their goodwill, they find a way to curse you then. Mr. President, what is happening in Barbados? I want us Barbadians to really ask the question, what are we doing as a society? Because we blame the children, but yet when you look at the adults and the behavior, they are just as indisciplined as the children. Mr. President, in a society where people do not respect law and order, there will be anarchy. It is as simple as that. And why I am pleading with both Barbadians and the government, because the government cannot do it alone. We can have all the fancy plans in the world, all the best economic policies, growth projections, sustainable development policies, blue-green economy, creative industries, we gather in. Mr. President. But you see, if we do not get this under control, this is an immediate and present danger to the fabric of our society. So, Mr. President, if this bill has come before the House at the request of the police, by all means, facilitate it. The government has my support in that, because I believe the police need the necessary measures to be protected when they go on the street to keep us safe. But at the same time, I want the government to know the messaging around this made the government appear soft on crime. And we cannot be soft on crime, Mr. President. People are shooting in broad daylight, shooting in shopping malls. Mr. President, it is as though people believe within a criminal element, they are not the ones who run Barbados. And we have to ask the question, how did we get here? And everybody has to answer that question. Because if the Bail Act, as I said, the amendment to the Bail Act did not act as a deterrent, the government has to ensure that any messaging and any policy measures going forward makes the government, even if it is in appearance, seem tough and strong on crime prevention. Because, Mr. President, I'm going to tell you this. When citizens do not feel safe, when the average person feels as though they don't have any protection, you know what happens? Vigilante justice. You are going to see the average person start arming themselves because of the fear that they feel walking around in this country. And that is a place we do not want to go. Mr. President, I am not a criminologist. I'm not a sociologist, but clearly we need a stronger policy on crime prevention. I do not know what it will entail, but I am hoping that the government, in short order, they have press conferences often, speak to this issue in a forceful and meaningful way that will allow us as citizens to feel as though something is being done to combat what is happening out on our streets. And with those few words, Mr. President, I am obliged to you.
Thank you very much, Senator Dr. Drakes. Senator the Reverend Charles Morris.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I stand to give my support to this amendment that stands here before us this evening. And I want to say, in fact, give my unequivocal support to the issue of the reduction of tint on our car windows or vehicle windows. But sir, in fact, the recommendations that I've heard, except for some by Senator Drakes, and dealing with crime, especially the ones, the suggestions coming from the opposition senator, all of these come after crimes have been committed, not before. The issue is to get crime, to solve the matter of crime before the crime happens. I also want to say, as a sociologist, I study sociology, history. I like to begin my speeches, sir, seek in theory. And there is a theory called the broken window theory. It was developed by George Keller and James Wilson. And to put it simple, if you pass and see a window broken and it is not fixed, sometime later you pass and you see another window broken, and then later other windows are broken. Sooner or later the whole house is ransacked. And when we apply that to crime, sir, if we do not nip crime, then it raises its head. It gets worse. So, and that is what is happening. Fix the broken window. That's what we need to do. And how do we do this? I am not going to follow those who say that the tint solves crime. It will not solve crime. As a matter of fact, we've had the issue of tint in the traffic management bill sometime before. I believe it is still there, and it is just being amended. But tint is not going to solve crime any more than shutting people out of their church service. Tint is not going to solve crime anymore, and sir, I'm going to be brutally frank today. It is not going to solve crime any more than holding a fake press conference. It is not going to solve crime anymore than sponsoring a football team with bread, and when you lose the election, you call back for the bread. I'm brutally frank today, sir. You know, Alexander the Great said, an army of sheep led by a lion will defeat an army of lions led by a sheep. That's what Alexander the Great said. And I do not believe that this country is about to allow itself to be led by a sheep. What is the issue, sir? The issue is, and I've heard the opposition senator talk about what the government has done and not done. 22 murders for the year so far, 13 have been by firearms. And when we look, in fact, there was a stabbing some recently as well. But the police have charged most of these persons or have the suspects in custody. That's the first thing. And I'm saying that the attempts that we use right now are after the crime. Look and see what has been done. The number of judges doing criminal trials have been increased from 2 under the last administration to 8. There were only 2 judges doing criminal matters under the last administration. Now it's gone up to 8. Since 2018, the number of the attorneys in the DPP's office has increased from 8 prosecutors to 20 prosecutors. An enormous improvement in dealing with criminal matters in the high courts. Like then you can see, in the 18-month period, commencing January 2023 and ending June 2024, 584 indictable matters were disposed of. 67 of them were murder, sir. The opposition center mentioned the Bail Act. Yes, there has been legislation to deal with that, a new Bail Act, sir. Plea bargaining, trial by judge alone trials, $145 million voted for the police for this financial year from 111 in 2018. So all of these things have been done, but yet they do not see the police doing it or the government doing anything. But a lot of it happens after the crime has been committed. So in terms of the traffic, let us look at the road. We still have speeding on the roads. We still have speeding on the road. And we have these people with the tents driving around and shooting at people. And the police are saying, look, we cannot see in the cars. Some of them driving with the tents, dark tents, in the back seat of the cars. What I do not agree with, sir, is the fine. Because I'm told that the fine is $500. If it is, it's $500 and $10 every, if you miss it. I believe it should be double, sir. If you miss it, $500. That's what happened in places like England. And let me tell you something, sir. There are countries, all the countries in the world I know about now have the tent laws. So the deputy commissioner and then going to park his car, or the chauffeur park his car in front of his residence. And the traffic warden put the ticket on it. Nobody questions that. I mean, we had to make the necessary call to the traffic warden, to the office, because work was going on at the house. So we couldn't park any place else. But these fines are paid or you lose your vehicle. Look at the road, how we travel. The ZRs and the minibuses, sir. No respect at all on the roads. When they're not speeding, they're not stopping at the bus poles. Even this morning on my way here, a ZR van got the whole road blocked up because he's looking for passengers. Fix the broken windows, sir. Deal with the infractions on the highways. And don't talk about if you have 2 minibuses or ZRs coming in different directions, they stop and they form conversations. Fix the broken windows. Motorcyclists on the road, sir. Not only are they speeding, but sometimes I wonder if any of the wheels are on the road. Because the first time I can see motorcycles riding or somebody riding a motorcycle in a horizontal position is happening in this country. Fix the broken windows. But there's more to it, sir. There's more to it. People people are making light of what the PM said. And you know, honesty determines that we should be frank and look at the context in which it was said. Because we're all omitting the context. I never got the impression that the Prime Minister was asking for money. I never got that impression. What she was saying, that she did not want to lock up anybody. How many countries in this world do people get locked up for traffic infractions? How many? But there's a level of hypocrisy going on in this country, sir, and I'm going to be brutally frank about this. We look at the schools, there's violence. We look at some of these unions that are associated with the Democratic Labour Party, who themselves have encouraged violence. And I want to make a plea here now, sir, that how could any person in charge of the national organization be the subject of criminal activity? And therefore, I'm speaking frankly. I am calling on the president of C2SAB to resign his position because he is a subject of criminal activity.
Senator Morris, you cannot go there, sir. Please withdraw and move on.
Withdraw, sir. Those who are involved, withdraw, sir. Withdraw.
I urge you to speak to matters of policy.
Yes, sir. I'm speaking to matters, but when...
and not in relation to particular individuals or offices. Please.
Sir, when we have individuals who are who show signs of being aligned with criminal activity, what is that saying to our young people? What is it saying?
We would love to hear that from you.
You understand? Sir, I am saying, sir, that there is a level of hypocrisy in this country regarding crime.
That's right.
That's my contention. And it's coming from a lot of persons who support the Democratic Labour Party.
I'm mentioning at your next parliament.
In the schools, sir, in the schools. Do you know why we have problems in the schools?
On a point of order, Mr. President.
There's what's point of order.
I believe that the senators should withdraw that comment with regard to the Democratic Labour Party and linking persons linked to the Democratic Labour Party with crime.
So you told me don't call names, so I would not call anybody's name in here.
Yes, but I also would want you not to, with a broad brush, smear institutions either. I think that in the spirit of the debate, you should withdraw the comment and move on.
Withdraw, sir. Withdraw. Sir, let us look at the schools and why we have so much criminal. Huh? I said withdraw. I withdraw, sir.
Please proceed.
Yes, sir. Sir, let's look at the schools. Do you know why we have so much indiscipline in the schools, sir? Let's go back to what happened. And I was a teacher. I was also first vice president of the Secondary Teachers Union. So therefore, I faced it head on. Sir, there was a time when we had experienced teachers in our schools who did not have master's degrees. But they were experienced and they were able to control schools. Some of them acted, in fact, some of them were principals without a master's degree. Some of them were deputy principals without a master's degree. In one fell swoop, sir, the legislation was changed, and it was changed and effective immediately. That the qualifications for principal and deputy principal was a master's degree. And a lot of persons who did not have master's degrees at that time, a lot of them sir, were removed from those positions. But when they removed that, especially those who were active. And they were replaced with with teachers who had less than 10 years experience, and some of them were principals and deputy principals. In other words, those with the experience and the know-how to rule the schools were not principals or deputy principals. In fact, they were not even given the opportunity to get qualified, as was done during the time, I think it was 1978, around there, when the then Prime Minister Tom Adams, when they wanted to raise the bar for the qualifications, the Ministry of Education allowed those teachers to get qualified. And therefore, we had in the schools the teachers with experience. They were there. What is even more, sir, is that since the legislation came in with the qualifications, a lot of them had to back out. But what is more, some of those teachers that wanted to get qualified, by that time, they wanted to go to university, do their masters. That was the time when the students then had to pay tuition fees at the university. And it was as if the parents vicariously allowed their children to go and get their degrees, and they did without the masters, so to promote themselves. From then on, sir, there was chaos in our schools, because we had many schools with principals and leaders. And I'm speaking from experience, sir. From what I saw, who could not control a classroom of one person now cannot control a classroom. How do you expect them to control a classroom of 1,000 people? And I am saying, sir, the schools keep in chaos from then on, although there are other factors as well. And what do we have? Senator Dress mentioned it, that what we are doing is outsourcing our children from a very early age. So from 5 or 6 years old, 6 months old, the children go to their nursery. Then they go to the pre-primary or whatever it is. Then they're always in school. Our children are passed on to some person else. And they have a serious problem, sir, with what is going on. Yes, it is true. How many of I have said in here already, sir, too many of our children in the schools, sir, are suffering from sexual relationships with their seniors, as teachers. And some of them becoming pregnant. And when you become, as a female, when you become pregnant in school, that is it for you. Believe it or not. That is it. And we have, sir, to stop playing the politics with this issue of crime. What do we do? Fix the broken window. All these methods that I heard Senator Warren mention come after the fact. So, one of the things that presents itself is, and they're constantly doing it, is the common entrance examination. Too many of our students in the schools are left outside the circle when it comes to that. And a lot of them are taking on criminal activity. When we look around, see so many of our children, over 2,000 every year, who feel that they're left out of the system. That is a cause for concern. Yet, we do not want that those who are opposing educational transformation, one that includes all, one that gives everybody the benefit of a benefit to move on. But that needs to be addressed. The other thing is what the government is doing too, is that the government has a lot of programs going on. I think one is Coursera, and the other one is ITI. All of these are free, and some of our children should be coaxed into doing these kind of programs. So don't ask what the government is doing. We also have to ask what we are doing, because it's a sociological problem. However you look at it, it is a sociological problem. And therefore, sir, rather than looking for solutions after the crime has been committed, because, sir, when we consider and I've heard it on every call-in program, I've heard it even in here, I've heard it all over the place. The strategy to deal with crime is to do this, is to do the next, and to do this, and all of it happens after. We need strategies to deal with the persons before they commit crimes. That's what we need to do. And then when we look around and see institutions doing things that are questionable, doing things that are not lifting up a population, then that is a cause for concern. So we can do all of these, we can do almost everything. Everything we can do. But we can blame the schools, we can blame the government, as that is the thing. And the thing is that everybody in Barbados now do not want to accept responsibility. But you know this was from creation. You know this was from creation, sir. Not creation story about Adam and Eve. It was accepting responsibility. Being accountable. Not with nobody eating an apple and all kinds of foolishness, sir. It is about accountability. Not me, it is the government. Not the government, it is the international institutions. So we continue to blame and blame. So it's the criminal now in Barbados, oh, the government, the government, the government, as though the government lives in the house with these persons. And you heard Senator Drexler mention all those things that go on in the house. We mentioned all of them, we've heard all of them. The time has come for us to, you know what, look inward sometimes. What can I do to solve the problem in this country? What can I do? What can you do, sir? What can Senator World do? What can all of us in here do? What can the wider community do to assist in this problem? But we are blaming hither, thither, and yon. And we have people in our society, sir, that are perpetuating this crime that all can see. So when they say so, if there's one thing nobody accuses me of, it's telling a lie. They may call me other things. And most of them is controversial. Huh? Or they call me controversial. They call me out, but they cannot call me a liar. And that means, therefore, that there's trust. When you are honest with people, people trust you. And therefore, sir, with these few controversial words, I wish to say to you, let us fix the broken window. Fix the broken window. I believe, sir, that even though there may be criticism of that theory, fix the broken window. And we'll bless you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Reverend Charles Morris. Senator Kevin Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just left another place where you had to preface your arguments with authorities. And in anticipation of certain rebuttals, I looked up an expression from a Roman statesman at the time, Cicero. And he had said, when you have no basis for your argument, you must attack the plaintiff. We call it ad hominem attacks. Do with that what you will, sir. I've listened to the narrative of the government. I've listened to the statements of said narrative by the opposition, and I've listened to the impassioned plea of my fellow independent Senator Driggs. And recognizing our role in this new republic to speak truth to power and attempt as much as possible to keep the debate within a balanced forum, I thought it prudent to perhaps bring things back to center with regard to what we're debating today. Now, sir, when I look at the legislation which we were provided with, and I say that deliberately, under objects and reasons, it says this bill would amend the Road Traffic Act, Cap 295, to empower the minister to prescribe the cases in which a person may discharge his liability for contravention of regulations made under the Act through the payment of a penalty administratively and the remediation of the contravention. In other words, as set out by the leader of government business, it allows you to render unto Caesar for any transgressions by way of a fine. Now, also as identified by the spokesman on behalf of the opposition, the concept of what fits within the realm of those regulations is not set in stone. So while we are today discussing regulations in relation to tint, those regulations can be expanded and or contracted, added to, and or divided. So perhaps we are having more of an esoteric approach, and maybe it's more of a narrative where we say, look, we're moving away from criminalizing certain aspects of road traffic issues to seeing how we can deal with these issues, but also utilizing a mechanism which allows there to be a pecuniary benefit to the state. In other words, you get money. Maybe that's it. And somehow this debate has taken on a national import by being attached to the issue of crime prevention. And I don't think that anyone listening or anyone in this chamber would doubt the ability of this government to shape a narrative. I don't think any of us would not recognize the skill at which these matters are handled. So there is obviously a purpose for what we're doing and a reason. And what is that? Sir, as echoed by the independent senator who spoke before me, there is a serious concern about crime. I think that goes without saying. I have noted with interest the statements, as just said by the speaker from the government side, that is a sociological issue. In my view, sir, and this is just me, the same way that you take the kudos, you take the blows. In other words, you win some and you lose some. The government can say that we ought to be commended for our progress with regard to the economy. By the same token, the opposition ought to be able to say the government should be condemned with regard to the crime situation. In my mind, you can't have it both ways. The attempt at what we're doing is to have a debate, though, about this piece of legislation and how we encompass these different perspectives. Crime and violence, sir, was a political rallying cry that was decried when it was first made. The same way when the current Prime Minister raised the issue of CLICO and insurance regulation, it was decried. And what we see here in this chamber is that what starts off, I think there's a statement about the first time an idea is made is ridiculed, then is accepted, and then is lauded. What starts out being something that's jeered and mocked, after a while, suddenly becomes accepted as a truism. What we're dealing with, though, is the current reality. The issue of tint, to me, is a non-issue. If the government wants to regulate tint, regulate tint. That's within the ambit. You were given that mandate by the populace of Barbados. If it is stated that the police want the reduction of the tint to allow the crime prevention efforts, there is no red blood Bajan who has an issue with that. We are still at the core a society which derives itself from a plantocracy in a situation where people will tell you if the police come wrong here, what you are doing for them to come wrong here. So we still have that built in. So I don't think anybody has an issue with regard to the tint or the government or the police saying that this is necessary to prevent crime. I think what the issue is, Mr. President, is that it has become conflated, and it then presents a scenario where if it is said that crime is a sociological or familial or else some other type of issue which is outside of the remit, it then causes that conflict of ideologic, what are you doing, how is this responsible, why are you not dealing with it? For me, sir, I'm limited in my contribution to the road traffic issues. If we're talking about the Road Traffic Act, we should be talking about some of the issues which continue to plague all of us in relation to road traffic. We passed legislation to allow the inspectors on the minibuses, correct, sir? Sorry, I shouldn't be questioning you. We passed, Mr. President, you will recall, I just left another place. You will recall, Mr. President, that we passed regulation to allow inspectors on the minibuses. Has there been any data provided to see what fruits that has borne? Has there been improvement in terms of the conduct? What are the continued steps and pressures that we need to put on these ZRs? It is quite clear that they continue to do as they like. You can't talk about road traffic without dealing with that. And I've heard other speakers mention it. Sir, we cannot talk about road traffic without talking about the situation of the congestion which occurs outside of fast food places, especially in Oistins. When people stop to go and line up and buy their fast food, which should be an issue for all of us. There's a previous champion who was here, but she's no longer here, where people stop to line up to go and buy the fast food and block the road. And it leads to congestions. And the owners of the fast food establishments, is there responsibility on them? I don't know. Is there responsibility on the persons who are waiting to get in and block up the road? I don't know. But these are the type of issues that we have to deal with. Sir, we cannot talk about road traffic issues without dealing with the potholes. I traverse the road, I shouldn't be telling tales if we're talking about crime and things, but I traverse the road between Bannatynes and St. David's almost daily. And sir, I'm not a speeder, I'm a cruiser. And they have fellas who come in on that road seeking to avoid the potholes / transitory inconveniences, which is a term which was attributed to a former prime minister. It was actually a legal term. Justice Hoffman was describing it, sir. But I digress. Persons, when you're driving through these back roads, swerve to avoid the potholes and could lick you up. Yeah. We can't talk about road traffic without dealing with these issues. So while there's this whole debate about tint and road traffic, these are some of the pressing issues which the public of Barbados continue to face. So let's give the government all the support they need, and I would encourage the government deal with this. This is low-hanging fruit. I don't think there's any Barbadian who would have an issue if there's a clamp down on these ZRs. I ain't asking you. I tell you. I don't think there's any Barbadian who would have an issue dealing with the congestion or dealing with the issue of potholes. So we could deal with tint, no issue, but let's deal with all these other things as well. But in terms of the tint, sir, my statement is this. The enforcement of the regulation has to be properly managed. The machines that the police officers will be given have to be properly distributed and regulated, and the training. Because we are going, I'm not asking you, sir, we are going to have issues when it's rolled out with how it's measured, who doing the measurement, what angle he doing the measurement, if the machine was calibrated, I am not asking you, sir, I'm telling you past experience. Right now is an eye test where you come out by the junction, you see the gentleman waiting for you to see who's doing their rolling stock, you get pulled over and you get your indication. The ability to check to ensure that it's done properly, sir, is key. The government says it will be doing an educational program. We will see, sir. But in terms of the regulations themselves, which were circulated, I have some suggestions to make. We've heard today the government speakers lauding the efforts of the judiciary and the prosecutors in terms of dealing with crime. However, the regulations which we have been provided indicate that the persons who are exempt from the tint regulations, that is, the persons who are allowed to keep their tint, currently stand as the President, the Prime Minister, Defense Force, prison personnel, and other persons who have submitted the necessary medical qualifications to do so. There should be consideration, I say, sir, for the Attorney General, which is not in what I have seen, the Chief Justice, which is not in what I have seen, the 8 judges who we just referred to, who are supposed to be dealing with the criminal backlog, they're not listed in there, or the other judges, heaven forbid, who have to deal with all these situations with debtors and jealous spouses and all the myriad of issues that judges have to deal with, nor is there provision for the prosecutors. If there is a safety concern, which is why, or a national security concern, which was why we have President PM, certainly the Chief Justice, the Attorney General, judges, and prosecutors should be included in this list because these are the persons who are on the front line. I know we can talk about senators and MPs, sir. Nobody deals with that. We know we'll get through. We'll break for ourselves, sir. But in all, bringing it back to the center, the debate is supposed to be about the road traffic and the issue of the tint. The debate in terms of the legislation speaks to discharging liability for contraventions of regulations under the Road Traffic Act and the payment of penalties, that is money, to remediate the same. I've said what I have to say, and I thank you for the opportunity to do so, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Kevin Boyce. If no other speakers, Senator Cummins.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to, as usual, thank all of the honorable members who have spoken. And I want to take the opportunity to revisit a particular press conference where, in that press conference, the Honorable Prime Minister, the Leader of Cabinet, the Leader of Government, spoke about a number of things, including the creation of what she termed at the time a Citizen Advisory Council. She identified the various elements within our society and our community where crime can impact, has impacted, and needs to be involved in finding solutions. I believe at the time that the Honorable Prime Minister spoke, she spoke then about ensuring that we have an all of Barbados approach to crime solving. She made sure in that conversation as well that she said the issue of crime cannot be, must not be politicized. It is for that reason, Mr. President, that I did not pick a noise in my opening presentation, and I deliberately started to point out how much money this government has assigned in our annual estimates of expenditure to the Barbados Police Service since 2018. I deliberately, and I said so, did not go any further beyond 2018 because I sought not to politicize this issue until I had to respond. But because at that time in the press conference, the Prime Minister pulled together citizens and representatives from diverse parts of the country, teachers, community activists, business people, law enforcement, and persons who, as one Barbados, could come together and find common solutions to a common problem. She said so in that press conference, Mr. President. She said at the time publicly that because she did not want to politicize this matter, she wanted also to invite a representative of the opposition to sit on this because it ought not to have been politicized. To date, that offer has not been taken up. And she's been very clear on these things. There are certain issues, whether it is education, transformation, if it is on matters relating to crime, that we as a people have to tackle the solutions together. They're not to be sacrificed at the altar of political expediency. And I want to take the opportunity then today to call on the members who were invited to take up their seats on the Citizen Advisory Council who have to date not done so or designated a representative to come and be a part of the solution and stop shouting across the way at the government about what everyone else should do. Come and be a part of the solution. If I remember correctly, Mr. President, I remember, because there's precedent for this, when we were having economic issues in the pre-2018-ish era, the then leader of the opposition, as she was then, called on the government to establish what she described as a council of elders to solve the fiscal and the financial and economic problems that Barbados was facing. Even in opposition, she felt that there were certain issues that ought not to be politicized. And as an opposition leader, she wanted to participate. And she said, we are willing to sit with you and to bring together the wise men from all over, wherever they are, and to agree on commonly found solutions for our country, not some and not others, for our country. And as Prime Minister, she did the same thing with the Citizens Advisory Council. In this honorable chamber, I believe that there are a few of us who have served in this chamber since 2018. We also remember that there have been sessions where we have come with the Attorney General, with the Commissioner of Police, as he was back in 2018, and we had full presentations to the Senate members on issues relating to crime, Mr. President, and on issues relating to legislative amendments, specifically those that required a 2/3 majority. We have always taken a consultative posture and an all-embracing posture on certain matters, and crime is at the top of that list. Let those who have ears hear. Whether it is in opposition or in government, there is a way to conduct the affairs of men that does not reject the idea that there must be an approach to Barbados that sends a message to those who we lead that solutions are not found in the bosom of others, but they're found in our own bosom, collectively and together on key issues that affect us. Now, Mr. President, I want to take just a few moments to respond to some of the queries that were raised by the honorable members. Now, Senator Worrell raised a number of issues, and I agree with him on police orders being respected. In fact, in my own presentation, I opened by saying that we wanted to make sure that Barbadians understood that you have to respect the lawful orders of police. I opened by saying that I myself have witnessed that extensively over the last few days, especially about Barbadians completely disregarding. Senator Boyce, in his contribution, spoke about the behavior of ZRs, and we have come to this chamber and made many amendments to legislation, including road traffic amendments, to address the issues of indiscipline on our roads. So it is an issue that all of us can get behind readily. Now, Senator Worrell, in speaking about community engagement, raised the fact that we have the Police Boys and Girls Club on Bay Street and asked why these things did not happen elsewhere. Now, I'm glad that he asked that question because, and it always happens, Mr. President, and it's really not intentional, Senator Paris, and I wear my Rotary pin with pride, but at that Boys and Girls Club, every Saturday for 12 weeks, I think it is, twice a year, we run a program in collaboration with the Juvenile Liaison Scheme, with the Barbados Police Service, and with the Probation Department. And all students, we have kids that come in from 9 up to teenage years, and they come in and they do programs if they are encountering the law already, if they've already started to get into trouble. Parents, there's a parental intervention component of that because, as Senator Morris and Senator Drake said, it starts in the home. Parents have to be involved. It is also why, under the government specifically, the police have indicated that there are a number of community engagement initiatives. There is a school liaison program, which is undertaken in collaboration with principals, teachers, guidance counselors, and it is being executed in primary and secondary schools to target at-risk youth. There have been a number of case conferences which have been convened by the Barbados Police Service. They have been included at several secondary schools, and I can see, I don't want to call the names of the schools here, but I can see at least 5 schools listed that the Barbados Police Service has hosted case management conferences. We are talking about road traffic, yes, and there is a program for road safety, and it is underway with the Barbados Police Service in primary schools across the country. There's a program called The Crossover. The Crossover is presented to Class 4 students in preparation for their transition from primary to secondary, and it focuses on a number of things, including decision-making, peer pressure, self-esteem building, and the age of criminal liability. The police is involved in all of these activities across the country, not just in Bay Street at the Boys and Girls Club. They also have, Mr. President, a reading day. This is something that they do. They go into the schools to build relationships with the kids, and I can see the schools that they're listed here. This initiative fosters literacy development, critical thinking, and student engagement, while also strengthening community relations between law enforcement and young learners. There's a specific program for the care of the elderly, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker. It talks about collaboration with various elderly care homes, where the community officers have been engaging and entertaining and partnering with persons in the elderly care community, and a special outreach to ensure that they have access to the persons who live alone in the elderly community. There is a business alert program. All of this is under the Barbados Police Service as community engagement, Mr. President. It was established in collaboration with the stakeholders and business owners to ensure that there is an enhancement of security awareness, and crime prevention strategies. There's youth outreach and intervention. There's the King's Trust program. There's the police enrichment time program, the crime prevention through environmental design program, and the list goes on. So just because we drive up Bay Street and we see the Boys and Girls Club, it does not mean that that is the only program that the Barbados Police Service is running in our communities. That is notwithstanding the outposts, that is notwithstanding the patrols that the police are undertaking. There are any number of activities that the Barbados Police Service is undertaking, Mr. President. So I want to assure Senator Worrell, through you, Mr. President, that there is so much more happening with community policing than that which we see at Bay Street. Senator Drake's presentation, there's very little, if anything, that Senator Drake said that I could take issue with. We want to ensure that we are sending the right messages to all segments of community. And the fact of the matter is, nobody can tell me how to feel, or you, in your own home, based on your lived experience. And the fact of the matter is, as much as the government has invested in the police service, in crime prevention, because there is an entire crime prevention program, as much as the government is investing in the One Family program to address the issues of sociology and family and community and dysfunction that has been raised, there are still these issues that will persist. And people have to be able to feel how they feel about it. And that's okay. And they have to be able to say how they feel about it. That's okay too, Mr. President. But I want to focus, just as I close, Mr. President, on the question of the family unit. I have a daughter, and I think I've said it in here before. It is not the responsibility of anybody to raise my child for me. It's my responsibility. If I am not a responsible parent, if I am not a parent that is setting an example, then my child will become a mirror of me when they go out into the community, when they walk down the road, when they go into somebody's classroom. Mr. President, I went to St. George Primary School. My mother worked at St. George Secondary School. My mother was the school secretary at St. George Secondary for all of my life. You know that I couldn't even get below a certain mark in my class because my teachers were going to complain to my mother. I would always be in trouble. I got more licks in primary school, never for bad behavior, but always for my work. And before I could get home, the teachers were calling my mother. That's the truth, because they work within each other, within the proximity of each other. If I stopped short on my way from St. George Primary School to St. George Secondary School, my mother would know. I never did, Mr. President. I was always a responsible student. But more importantly, by the time I became a parent, I told a story yesterday to one of my staff members. We were having a meeting. My daughter was probably around 14 in secondary school. And there was this child who had been bullying and taunting her for a long time. She was too great. She was too this. She thought she was too this. She thought she was too that. And every day, this child would terrorize my child. And one day, it came to head. You know how children can be? And this girl was in her face. I don't like you, I don't let you, you feel you is this. And my daughter told me that as she stood there with all of these children in her school cheering them on, because children want to see a fight, they want to see how she can respond. What she heard in her head was, my mother tell me, if the school ever call her down here for me, she gonna make me shame. That's what my child remembered. And it was at the time that Lil Rick had a song, I Like Myself. And my child said she remembered the song in that moment. And she said to the girl, don't let me, but I like myself. And she walked off, and the kids chanted, and they were quite excited. But she walked away, not because of anything other than the fact that the dominant voice in her head was her mother, who held her feet to the fire. Parents need to hold their children to the fire and be the dominant voice in their head positively. Not because you think that your parent will come and curse the teacher or beat the teacher or make a scene at the school. That is not parenting. Not because your parent is going to come and defend wrongdoing. Not because your parent is going to back you even when you're 100% wrong. Because those are the scenarios where if you don't learn right from wrong in your household and your parents don't hold you to account, no matter what legislation this government or any government puts in place, you will encounter the police at some point in time in life, and this is what we're trying to avoid, starting in our households. The idea has to be to stop children from having to encounter police unless something goes wrong. And when they have to call the police, they should have no difficulty with encountering the police because they have not run afoul of the law. That's really what we're here for. That's what we as leaders are responsible for. That's what we as professionals are here for. That's what we as business people, especially on the independent side, are here for. That's what we as doctors and lawyers and community leaders and advocates and priests are here for. That's what we as government are here for. That's what we as opposition are here for. And that is what we as parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, all are here for. That is the focus, Mr. President, of an all-of-country crime prevention strategy. Today, what we're talking about is a road traffic amendment to ensure that we can lower the depth of tint on windows in vehicles to empower and to protect the police of this country in the execution of their duties and responsibilities. And it has been made at their request. If the police came and asked for additional equipment, as they have done, this government has responded in the affirmative. If the police came and said that we need to have more posts created because we are short on numbers, that's what this government has done. If the police came and asked, as they did, for the issues of special constables to be resolved to help add value to what they're doing, then that is what this government did. If the police came and said that they wanted cameras in different areas so they could have policing and have eyes, that is what this government has done. This is what a government does when it is supporting the people who protect our people. This government is supporting the Barbados Police Service with this amendment, and not only do I commend this amendment to this chamber, but I commend it to all right-thinking Barbadians. I beg to move, Mr. President, that this bill now be read a second time.
Thank you, Senator Cummings. The question is that this bill be read a second time. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honour do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do not leave the chair and the Honourable the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Honourable the Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 do now stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 do now stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honour the Chair, the President of the President, the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honour the President the passing of one bill in committee. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
The chairman has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, I beg to move this bill now be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be now read a third time. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Road Traffic Amendment Number 2 Act of 2025.
The question is that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Road Traffic Amendment Number 2 Act 2025. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this sitting of the Senate now be suspended for a lunch break and to reconvene at 2:45 p.m.
Just before I put the question about our break, just want to acknowledge two young visitors to our chamber, Ms. Lithcock and Ms. Cox. Welcome. Happy to have you. Hope you found our session interesting. Lynch and Cox. Lynch and...
Lithcock and Lynch.
Lithcock and Lynch. My apologies for getting your... And they are in service students they are still? Yes. Clark Gittins and Farmer, guests of Senator Kevin Boyce. They see the many dimensions of their principle, as well as the many useful ways in which the study of the profession of law can be helpful in public policy and practice. You can feel free to ignore some of the comments that are aside. Pay attention only to the official speaker at the time. So welcome. The question is that this sitting of the Senate be suspended until 2:45 p.m. today. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This sitting stands suspended until 2:45 p.m. today.